Hey everyone, so the UK is not doing too well, okay, that's pretty obvious. There's lots of theories as to why this is happening. You know, how could the UK, once the ruler of the entire world, go from a position of such dominant strength to now being, what, overrun by third world immigrants and seemingly defenseless against the ravages of those immigrants? Well, I suppose one theory is that the Queen was an absolute monster. Now, it's not my theory, it's this guy's theory. But it's definitely a theory. Let's check it out.
On British Twitter, many will be familiar with what we would term slop accounts, who post generic watered-down, pro-British, pro-Israel, anti-Islamic, and civic nationalist type posts, often utilizing AI. The owners of such accounts are often not even British, very often they tend to be Indian. Recently, one of the more egregious examples of these accounts, going by the name of God Save Great Britain, posted a picture of the late Queen Elizabeth II with the following caption, quote, "This extraordinary woman carried out her duty until her very last breath because she knew Charles couldn't. She was right."
I've seen loads of tweets like this, actually. It's not the first one I've seen, saying more or less the same thing, that the Queen held back Charles for as long as she could, or something along those lines, like she was the saint, Charles is the idiot, she was trying to save the country, she lasted as long as she could, blah, 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 blah.
End quote. There was plenty of pushback against this post from people like myself, but at the time of writing, the post has 58,000 likes and over 7,000 retweets, and at first glance, most Brits would instinctively agree with the tweet. The image surrounding the late Queen was seemingly immaculate. To most people alive today, she was always a little delicate old lady, and a quiet one at that. She had mastered the art of decorum. She acted exactly like a monarch, or, at least, a monarch in the modern Britain.
God, guys, look at that. That's what Britain used to be.
She acted exactly like a monarch.
Look at that shit. That's awesome. That's in a foreign country that we ruled over.
Or, at least, a monarch in the modern British sense. That is, a figurehead. She was a blast from the past, a relic from a bygone age, and, as time went on, she essentially became all we had left from our great past. When she died, it hit almost everyone to the core, regardless of their political views. And even I was left momentarily saddened. It truly felt as if our great past had finally been buried.
I don't remember being sad. Sorry, my nose is itchy as hell. I don't remember being sad. I remember being... I don't know what the word is for it, actually. It wasn't sadness. It was more like I felt a sense of loss. There we go. But it wasn't sadness because I don't know the woman. You know, the Queen is dead. Okay. You feel a sense of loss. But I suppose, yeah, many people were upset about that. They were really sad about that. Obviously, the funeral was massive. She was the longest reigning monarch ever. And according to most people, the best queen ever as well.
There's a reason our people queued up in their thousands to go and say their final goodbyes. In life and in death, she was adored almost unanimously throughout the nation. Now that the dust has settled, though, it's worth taking a second look. Sure, on the surface, she seemed like the perfect, respectable queen that she was presented as. But was that really the case if you peer under the surface? Did the mask ever slip? What was her agenda? The mask most certainly did slip, and in many cases, in quite an egregious fashion. Queen Elizabeth was not one of our greatest monarchs, as she is presented. She is, in fact, perhaps the very worst. She presided over the destruction of everything which had taken us centuries to build. She cheered on and actively supported the genocide of her own people, the British people, abroad.
Honestly, guys, the dismantling of the empire and the way that it was done is about to shock you.
At home, she was equally as terrible to her people and cheered on their ethnic replacement. The church that she was the head of was also completely decimated and has now become a complete irrelevance.
It's a joke. The church is now an LBGTPQ plus fucking joke. It's an absolute nightmare. It promotes the devil.
Nowadays, she is often compared to her son, Charles, who, as king, has been immeasurably worse, at least when it comes to prudence. He isn't trying to hide it. He just comes right out and sucks up to the invaders, and effectively sticks the middle finger up at the British people. His mother had far more tact than that, and quite naturally, he is seen as far worse. But how great can a queen?
He is far worse. I mean, imagine Charles was actually intelligent and he hated the country. I mean, at least he just only hates the country.
really be
Sorry, I mean the people of the country.
who oversaw the collapse of our world-spanning empire? How great can a queen be who inherited an almost entirely homogenous Great Britain, a Britain peopled by her people, the British, and then leave behind a Britain in which only around 70% of the population were British? These are the people she was meant to protect. Any other monarch in history has been, or would have been, condemned for all time, had the same.
Exactly. That's completely true. And you know, we can blame the Fabians and we can blame Tony Blair as well, but the Queen was there throughout all of it. She saw it happen. She said fuck all. Maybe did a lot worse as well.
Or similar things happened during their reign. King John saw us lose our French territories and is remembered as our worst ever king. Queen Elizabeth lost so much more and sat back as large swathes of our own country were colonized by third world foreigners. Her British subjects in those regions were then subjected to untold horrors such as the rape gangs, in which hundreds of
Almost looks like revenge, doesn't it, guys? It does look like revenge. Like they're doing to the UK what the UK has done to the rest of the world. Only we didn't do it. It wasn't even us. It was our psychotic leaders, not the people. The people don't deserve this.
thousands of our little girls were tortured or even murdered by mostly Pakistani men. Not once did she lift a finger. Does this all not make her immeasurably worse than King John? Let's take a real look at Queen Elizabeth. This is by no means a deep dive on her entire life or all of her evil deeds, but this, I hope, at least serves as a partial eye-opener so that people will think again about Her Majesty.
I will say one thing before he gets into this. A lot of people expected the Queen to be politically impartial, right? She was never supposed to voice her opinion on things. She was never supposed to get involved. But that's on the surface, in the press, in mainstream politics. I don't think... Well, we're about to see that there's lots of ways that she could have actually helped this country, but chose not to. So,
a couple things before we begin. Firstly, this video is in no way, shape, or form political, and is purely a work of history. Please do not...
It obviously is political, because you'll see.
overthink it and turn it into something it is not. Thank you. Secondly, a huge thank you to those of you who have signed up as a member here on YouTube, on Subscribestar, or, best of all, over on Ko-fi. Without your kind subscriptions, or one-time Ko-fi donations, these videos would quite simply not be possible, and I wouldn't be able to
Yeah, guys, go check out his channel if you do like this content. I recommend it.
do this for a living. I really cannot thank you enough. Even the lowest tier helps immeasurably. Thank you. When Queen Elizabeth came...
Oh, actually, that's a good point. Make sure that you're subscribed. That's all the promotion I'm going to do.
...to the throne in 1952, she inherited a very different Britain to the one her father had in 1936. Britain had been bankrupted by World War II, and the will to empire was almost completely gone. Worst of all, American pressure to decolonize was ever increasing. India had already gone. We had pulled out of Palestine, and the rest of our empire was looking to follow in those footsteps. It all just seemed inevitable. Trying to cling onto this empire at this stage, for most governments, would have been futile. It was a tough pill to swallow, but that was simply the reality of the situation. Queen Elizabeth's response was to throw her weight behind the Commonwealth project instead of just pulling out. The Commonwealth, essentially, is meant to be an association of independent states consisting of countries which had formed out of the British Empire. Initially, before the war, the Commonwealth was by any definition simply the white settler colonies of the British Empire, which had found their own feet to such a degree that they were now basically independent, but would still be...
Isn't that funny how we sent out people to create these countries by themselves, and they ended up doing such a good job that they formed their own independence? Australia, New Zealand, the United States, for Christ's sake. So Rhodesia, South Africa, all of these places where we sent out white settlers, they created countries so strong that they became regional powers in themselves. And yet, as you'll see, when we leave these countries and the indigenous people take control of them, well, suddenly they're not very good countries anymore. They go back to the default state of being shit.
...be part of the British Empire in name. They were bound by ethnicity, and this definition made perfect sense. Australia, Canada, New Zealand, and South Africa had all been settled by the English, the Scottish, the Welsh, and the Irish. In the Balfour Declaration of 1926, at that year's Imperial Conference, the United Kingdom and her dominions agreed that they were, quote, autonomous communities within the British Empire, equal in status, in no way subordinate one to another in any respect of their domestic or external affairs, though united by a common allegiance to the Crown and freely associated as members of the British Commonwealth of Nations, end quote. Allegiance to the Crown was merely a polite way of putting it. The Commonwealth was explicitly racial. India had not been granted her independence, quite simply because they were not white. The British Empire was the global expansion of the British people. Anyone living within it before the year 1945 would have understood this. Queen Elizabeth, however, was embarking on quite a different venture and was throwing herself into uncharted waters. Instead of just dissolving the empire and letting these countries all get on with their own affairs, she insisted on just making every single territory of the British Empire part of the Commonwealth. This was not entirely her own doing, but she followed in the footsteps of her father to the extreme.
And this was one of the main mistakes that we made. In doing that, we started disregarding our own identity. And once you start disregarding your own identity and allowing other identities, other strong identities into your club, let's be honest, it's just a club, isn't it? The Commonwealth. So once these identities arrive into your club while you're currently trying to dismantle your own identity, what it leads to is white guilt. It leads to revenge colonization. It leads to the mass rape of the UK. It leads to all sorts of things that are not very good, because white guilt destroys nations.
In the 1949 London Declaration, the term British was removed from the term British Commonwealth of Nations, a sign of changing times, indeed. In her 1953 Christmas broadcast, Her Majesty described her new, multiracial Commonwealth.
Got a weird looking face, hasn't she? Like, I don't know what's going on with that. Doesn't look very English.
Quote, the Commonwealth bears no resemblance to the empires of the past. It is an entirely new conception, built on the highest qualities of the spirit of man, friendship, loyalty, and the desire for freedom and peace, end quote. This was quite a change from the British-only Club of 1926, in which every country had zero conflicting interests, as they were, after all, the same people, just on different land masses. In World War II,
we helped each other because we were the same people. We were just an extended family. That doesn't work with a Commonwealth with different people from different races and different countries and different creeds, different religions. Diversity is not a strength.
All of the dominions would rush to our aid and fight side by side with us. And why would they not? It was the most natural thing in the world. It is the same as defending your very own family members if they came into conflict with someone.
Exactly.
Who would stand by and do nothing in such a situation, regardless of the rights or wrongs? By contrast, the Commonwealth had never lifted a finger to help us. Quite the opposite.
And they never will.
They
never will. They'll just take and take and take. And now they're taking from our own country, within our own borders.
In the albatross around our necks ever since. In 1961, in Ghana, the Queen doubled down, quote, the Commonwealth is not a thing of the past. It is not tied to the British Empire. It is a completely new conception built on voluntary association, end quote. Quite simply, the Commonwealth now existed purely for royal ego. On paper, the British royal family were now the monarchs of the Commonwealth nations. In reality, this meant nothing at all. Britain had lost all benefits of empire, but the Crown wanted to keep the title. In reality,
they wanted to keep it for ego, guys. All of the shit that's happened in our country just for their egos.
In reality, these ties would create nothing but trouble, and even genocide against British populations. Every single African nation which was given independence immediately collapsed into anarchy and dictatorship. Yep. Massive ethnic violence was commonplace.
Yes, because they're not very smart, are they? Unfortunately, guys, you have to be brutally honest with this. They don't have a very high IQ. They're not just going to suddenly start building civilizations. It's not like they were just waiting for the perfect fucking time. They can't build them. That's why they live like this. That's why if you go to Africa now, there's slaves. There's poverty, like extreme levels of poverty, extreme levels of crime. They'll never be able to build it because they can't.
When they weren't massacring each other, however, they would turn on the white man. The aggressor would then suddenly become the downtrodden innocent victim. All of these third world states would band together each year.
Oh, look at that guy. He's got some eyes on the Queen, hasn't he? Fucking hell, that's some rapey shit right there.
At the Commonwealth Prime Minister's Conference and push the most anti-white line possible. If their demands were not met, then they would simply threaten to pull out of the Commonwealth, and even in some cases, boycott Britain. So much for these wholesome Commonwealth of Nations, united in shared values, and built upon the highest qualities of the spirit of man, as she put it. This was the absolute scum of the earth, literal dictators who had slaughtered millions, banding together to tear down the white man.
It's like now we're importing Palestinians and Afghanis and Kurds and all, like, the most violent people on the fucking planet. And we're like, yeah, do you want to come to England? I'll give you some benefits. You can even rape a couple of our kids if you want.
These demands the Queen and the British government conceded to willingly. Rhodesia is by far the best example. Joshua Nkomo, a literal terrorist dissident before Rhodesian independence, was welcomed to Britain with open arms as a Commonwealth migrant and showered in...
So, for those that aren't aware, Rhodesia is currently called Zimbabwe.
...taxpayer money, so that he could plan his terrorist acts from the UK. His children were educated in England at taxpayer expense, as he lived it up with a car and other luxuries, and was able to mix with Labour MPs and other high-level members of the British establishment. When Nkomo finally returned to...
Of course he's mixing with the Labour Party, the Fabian twats.
Rhodesia, he was 50 pounds heavier, fattened up by the British taxpayer. Rhodesia was, of course, demanding to remain the way it was. There was no colour.
Guys, look what they destroyed. This was a country, a fucking country, another white country, completely separate, just like Australia, like New Zealand, but they destroyed it.
But suffrage was decided by easily attainable monetary and literacy requirements. The latter was as simple as literally just signing your own name.
And I want to say, right, if you think that England can't fall, you're mental, because that was England. Everywhere we went, we created another England. It's just that Australia, well, that was allowed to keep growing. New Zealand was allowed to keep growing. The Americas allowed to keep growing. This place, they killed it. They killed it. And they can do the same to England. All they need to do is give minorities the right, like, all they need to do is give minorities more rights than the English. And they did it here, and you'll see.
In reality, this resulted in the white minority ruling the country, but evidently this was working, as Rhodesia was extremely prosperous and had perhaps the lowest crime rate on the entire planet. Britain, at the behest of the Commonwealth, demanded nothing less than national suicide. Every man should be given the right to vote, they said. And just a few decades beforehand, Britain would have considered these new voters to be violent savages who would take centuries to turn into functional, civilized human beings. Yet here they were, demanding they be put into power at the behest of the screeching Commonwealth horde. Prime Minister of Rhodesia Ian Smith wrote of his meeting with Duncan Sandys, Secretary of State for the Colonies and son-in-law of Winston Churchill. Quote, "We talked at length, and although his demeanour was more congenial than on the previous occasion, the final result gave me no cause for joy. He repeated and elaborated on the message which I had been given by Alec Home, stressed the danger of disrupting the Commonwealth, and told me that there would even be opposition from some left-wing Conservative MP to the agreement for which we were asking." End quote. Even Conservative MPs could not be moved. Anything which benefited white people would disrupt the Commonwealth. The head of the Commonwealth was, of course, the late Queen. In February...
It sounds very similar to the playbook that they're using now in the UK, right? Anything that you say that will help protect the country and save the country from what's happening, you're a racist, Nazi, xenophobe, right? You just want your own country and you want to stop it being destroyed. You're a racist, xenophobe. You're the worst scum of the world. If you want more diversity, well, you're the best thing ever. It's the same playbook. Honestly, guys.
February 1964, Sir Humphrey Gibbs, the governor of Rhodesia, gave a speech at the opening of Parliament. The governor is, of course, the Queen's representative in a given territory. Quote, "It is now plain that the British government are not prepared to be brought to any conclusion on the question of independence, except on the most extravagant terms, not because of misgivings about my government's competence and ability to govern in the interest of the country, or the logic or rightness of my minister's case, but because they wish to placate at all costs members of the Commonwealth who have declared openly their hostility to my government and my country." End quote. Her Majesty responded to these complaints by banning Rhodesian prime ministers from the Commonwealth Prime Ministers' conferences. Her own flesh and blood was being thrown out in the cold to placate the seething masses of Africa. Smith expressed his resentment publicly. Quote, "We are not excluded because we are no longer loyal to the Crown, or to the ideals on which the Commonwealth was founded. We are excluded because the Commonwealth has outgrown itself, and there is no longer room for us among the motley of small countries which have recently been granted independence and admitted to the Commonwealth without regard to their adherence to the ideals and concept on which it was founded. I wonder if we are...
So, look, guys, we had a strong empire, right? We had all these countries where we were in control and we were all unified. We were all together as a set of countries. We were all white. We were all English, Scottish, Northern Irish, Welsh. We were all unified. We had a common purpose, common law, everything. And then we started introducing third world countries into the Commonwealth. We increased diversity and the whole fucking thing fell apart.
really wanted in the Commonwealth any longer, and if we can serve any purpose by remaining, end quote. Before independence, Smith met with Salazar, the ruler of Portugal. He writes of their meeting, quote, he expressed his special concern for southern Rhodesia, assuring me that Portugal would continue with its proven policy of evolution in Mozambique and Angola, bringing local people into positions of authority as and when they proved themselves. But it was clear that Britain was coming more and more under the influence of the black members of the Commonwealth, and it was obvious to any logical observer that these countries were being manipulated as tools by the Russians. He was particularly distressed that the British were going along with this, not because they were unaware of what was taking place, but because of Britain's policy of appeasing the Organisation of African Unity. His source...
We have just been too nice to the world, guys. We have been too fucking nice to the world. And do you know what? The world, they're not grateful. They're not grateful at all. They're in our country right now doing unspeakable things. That's what you get for being nice.
Confirmed this, and he was pleased at the opportunity to pass it on to me, end quote. Rhodesia was left with no choice but to declare independence. To remain would have meant genocide at the hands of a black government, as later happened anyway. The Queen personally intervened during negotiations and completely threw her weight behind Harold Wilson, the Labour Prime Minister intent on making Rhodesia commit suicide.
So this is what I'm saying when that argument comes from people saying that the Queen never got involved in politics, that she was apolitical, that she was completely neutral, right? No, she got involved all the fucking time. It's just that I think the things that happened to the country were part of the plans, right? Maybe not everything. I don't know how far it went. I don't know if she was an actual fucking evil monster. I don't know. Maybe it was all just a massive blunder. I don't know, right? But she did get involved and she wasn't politically neutral.
British had even cheekily inserted a clause during negotiations which stated that all Rhodesian laws must be approved by the Queen. This was a Trojan horse. As Peter Joyce writes in Anatomy of a Rebel, quote, for Queen, of course, read British government, end quote. The Rhodesians at one point, utterly desperate, sent a letter to the Queen, begging their sovereign to help them out of their current situation and to see sense. Her response was essentially a veiled threat, demanding that they act constitutionally, that is, commit suicide. It was pointless of them to even try. The blacks of Rhodesia had already begun their attempt at white genocide, and the Queen had staunchly sided with them. Right from the very first attack, in fact, the Queen had chosen her side. In 1964, Piet Oberholzer was driving with his family.
This is brutal.
In Rhodesia's southeast, when suddenly he came to a makeshift checkpoint. Piet told his wife to stay in the car and hide their young daughter under the seat. He then cautiously approached the checkpoint and began to try to talk to the Africans blocking the road. As he did so, more Africans approached his car and began pouring gasoline all over his family. Piet immediately rushed to defend his family when suddenly a knife plunged into his chest. Heroically, however, he was able to fend off the savages and rushed inside of the vehicle. With his dying breath, he drove away and got his children to safety before the bumbling attackers could set the gasoline alight. He then fell dead, and thankfully, his wife and child were rescued. At the scene of the crime, the attackers left a bunch of messages written on lined paper torn from a school exercise book. They were all threats of white genocide. One read, quote, "Crocodile gang will soon kill all whites. Beware," end quote. These scumbags...
Diversity doesn't work, guys. Well, why are we inviting these people into the country? Why are we letting them come in the country? This is the right. Rhodesia will be England. England will be Rhodesia unless we do something very, very quickly to stop this from happening.
Bags were promptly caught by the Rhodesian security forces and quite rightly sentenced to death. This was where Her Majesty chose to directly intervene and demanded that the murderers be spared. The Rhodesians had, by now, had quite enough of her antics and had already declared independence. There was no question of listening to her. Her loyalty was by now very clear, and the criminals were put to death. Elizabeth, of course, had no qualms about helping terrorists. She would later meet with genocidal maniacs such as Robert Mugabe and Nelson Mandela with no qualms at all. Smith wrote of the moment when he sat down, right before making his final decision to break with Britain. Quote, "I slumped back in my chair for a few minutes to contemplate the situation. I was overwhelmed by a feeling of absolute frustration. There was, within my whole system, a very strong desire to preserve my links with the history and tradition and culture that I had been brought up to respect and believe in. But over..."
So why don't other people have that? Why do the Fabians want to destroy that? Why did the Queen, according to this gentleman, want to destroy that? What is it about them that separates them from us? Why do they not act like the English?
Over the last half-decade, this has taken a tremendous battering. When one looked at the composition of the current Commonwealth, the whole character of it had changed. Within Britain itself, we were landed with a socialist government, hell-bent on appeasing the cult of Marxism-Leninism, at the expense of the old traditional values of the British Empire. This was never part of my tradition and culture. But most important, and above all else, was the treatment to which we had been subjected, the breaches of agreements, the double standards, the blatant deception and blackmail with which we were confronted. To put it crudely, we had had an absolute bellyful. Rhodesians simply wished to be left to lead their own lives." End quote. To the Rhodesians, it was almost incomprehensible, and it was all about to get much worse. Throughout the entire conflict, Her Majesty harboured terrorists and allowed Britain to actively supply the terrorists on the ground. At the Commonwealth Conference of 1965, the Africans demanded that Great Britain smother Rhodesia in sanctions, and Rhodesia, the nation with the world's lowest crime rate, was declared a threat to world peace.
So remember, guys, Rhodesia at this point is still a white-ruled country. It's our country. Okay, and the Queen is actively fighting against it. Whether she's infected with leftism, whether she's a Marxist, a Fabian, whether she's a Jew, I don't fucking know. I really don't know. I don't know why she did this, but it sounds awful. Like, I didn't know how bad it was. Listening to this genuinely shocked me. Like, I don't know how much of this is true, but I'm guessing most of it.
The Third World dictators also demanded that Britain actively invade Rhodesia, but this, of course, was where Britain had to draw the line. After checking with the armed forces and reading the public mood, it rapidly became very clear that the British people would never tolerate directly attacking their own kith and kin, their own family. Instead, the British government, supported every step of the way by Her Majesty.
But they would have done it. You see, if the public reaction wasn't so viscerally bad, they would have went to war with their own colony. That's just fucking crazy, guys.
Had to settle for dumping endless amounts of taxpayer money into supporting the terrorists and enforcing a blockade on Rhodesia. A year after UDI in 1966, the Commonwealth Conference was the same as always. Smith writes of the Third World leaders, which Her Majesty had enthralled her country to. Quote, "Conder was incensed at the cutting down of British financial aid, and in typical manner resulted a hurling abuse and insult at Wilson, in which he was joined by a number of other black Commonwealth leaders in demanding a military solution in view of the fact that sanctions had proved to be a failure. The Prime Minister's conference duly took place, and as usual, was accompanied by much verbosity and many threats. The final communique of the 14th of September bore the taint of the new modern Commonwealth. In place of the traditional, reasoned, balanced, and mature wisdom associated with such associations in former days, it was now split into two clear-cut divisions. On one side, unfortunately consisting of the majority, with the failures, the have-nots, who resorted to the traditional of blaming everyone else for their deficiencies. On the other side, unfortunately the minority, with a responsible representative of those countries which had proved themselves to be truly independent and could stand on their own feet, the success stories. The first category were destructive, with their false accusations and threats, the other constructive, with their efforts directed at cooperation and assisting one another to improve standards of life. The failures resulted to the parrot cry that they were in the current predicament because they were exploited by the colonial powers. But Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and Rhodesia had gone through the same history. And as a matter of interest, so did USA and South Africa, and they are all glorious success stories.
Weird,
Those
huh?
who have not made the grade must stop looking for a scapegoat and look to themselves. Their corruption, incompetence, nepotism, external bank accounts, and high leisure preference. The fault, dear Brutus, lies not in our stars, but in ourselves." End quote. The Queen's behaviour did not improve.
What he's saying there is, in every white majority country that gained independence, it went on to become a successful country. But in every black majority country that gained independence, they went on to gain genocide. And then, obviously, their country turns to shit.
With time. Smith went on, quote, "It had, however, become increasingly difficult for us to separate monarch and empire from the deviousness of the politicians. Wilson went so far, later, as to drag the Queen into his machinations by getting her to include in a speech at the Jamaica Commonwealth Conference in April 1975 some provocative remarks about Rhodesia, which were a distortion of the truth. This caused a large number of our older generation of loyal citizens to become extremely angry, tearing up their pictures of the royal family and pulling down their Union Jacks. Some remarked that if only her father or grandfather had been alive, Wilson would have been put in his place." End quote. Queen Elizabeth was so petty that she demanded that the Rhodesian government remove the word royal from the Royal Rhodesia Regiment and the Royal Rhodesian Air Force. Obviously, by this point, though, the Rhodesians couldn't care less, and were happy to be rid of any attachment to the royal family. My fellow Rhodesia enthusiast Will Tanner also quote tweeted,
Imagine how betrayed you would feel. I mean, just the... You don't need to. What am I talking about? We live in England. We're going through the exact same fucking thing.
The original tweet, and he sums the Queen's approach to her own kith and kin up rather well. Quote, "As documented in So Far and No Further, Rhodesia's bid for independence during the retreat from empire, 1959 to 1965, Elizabeth I was integral in pushing Rhodesia's destruction. She encouraged it in every way she could, did her best to snub and isolate Ian Smith, and in 1980 sent then Prince Charles to lend Mugabe the legitimacy and support of the crown as he began his reign of terror. That aligned with her time as a royal generally, as she never once lifted a finger or spoke a word to protect the empire and British people, instead being more than willing to work with the Labour governments to put a cheery face on the destruction of the country. Yes, the royals have limited power, so there's little she could have directly done, but they had immense prestige before she and Charles squandered it, and that could have been used to defend British civilization from post-war tyranny and insanity, and she could have used her remaining political power to aid in that project. Instead, she ignored her duty entirely, and let the country go from ruling a quarter of the globe to barely being a backwater full of Muslims." End quote.
And it hasn't stopped since, guys. I'm not going to watch the entire video. If you want to go watch the end of this, feel free. The Zoomer historian. I want to quickly watch one of the speeches that was mentioned during this. The Queen's Christmas Message 2004. I have no idea what this says, by the way. Oh, look, more people talking about the Fabians. That's good.
Christmas is, for most of us, a time for a break from work, for family and friends, for presents, turkey and crackers. But we should not lose sight of the fact that these are traditional celebrations around a great religious festival, one of the most important in the Christian year. Religion and culture are much in the news these days, usually as sources of difference and conflict, rather than for bringing people together. But the irony is that every religion has something to say about tolerance and respecting others. For me, as a Christian, one of the most important of these teachings is contained in the parable of the Good Samaritan, when Jesus answers the question, "Who is my neighbor?" It is a timeless story of a victim of a mugging who was ignored by his own countrymen, but helped by a foreigner, and a despised foreigner at that. The implication drawn by Jesus is clear. Everyone is our neighbor, no matter what race, creed, or color. The need to look after a fellow human being is far more important than any cultural or religious differences.
That's incorrect, because if those people don't hold your values, what they'll do is just take advantage of you. They'll see no kindness in it. They'll see weakness. If you don't understand human behavior, if you don't understand the very worst that human beings can do, and you only believe in the very best that humans can do, they're going to murder you.
I work within the health service.
Is that it?
The Royal College of Nursing.
Recognize the benefits
It goes on.
of this positive approach, music and the arts. There is certainly much more to be done and many challenges to be overcome. discrimination still exists. Some people feel that their own beliefs are being threatened. Some are unhappy about unfamiliar cultures. They all need to be reassured that there is so much to be gained by reaching out to others, that diversity is indeed a strength and not a threat.
Oh, you nasty bitch. You nasty bitch. Is that where it came from, guys? It came from the very top. It came from the very top. I'm so sick of that phrase.
We need also to realize that peaceful and steady progress in our society of differing cultures and heritage can be threatened at any moment by the actions of extremists at home or by events abroad.
You see, the funny thing is, she's talking about us, right? She's talking about the right wing or right wing extremists. She's not talking about the actual extremists that ended up coming to this country and doing what they did. It's just their observation of what is happening and what could happen is completely 180 to what it should be. They shouldn't be looking at us and going, guys, you might be a problem if you don't accept this diversity, this wonderful diversity that we're going to push on you. We want you to be tolerant and open and not see race and all this stuff, while importing people that do see race, that are not tolerant, that do want to do harm to you. And we've seen that over the years, guys. We've seen it over the years. We see it every day now because of decisions from people like this.
We can certainly never be complacent. But there is every reason to be hopeful about the future. As I make visits around the country, I see at first hand the effort being made to bring communities together.
Where's the white people in that? So that doesn't look very fucking diverse, does it? That looks like this is what I'm talking about. You can't... Everyone knows, you all know, right? We just imported too many people. They weren't integrated. Either the Queen was a fucking idiot, or she's complicit in like a terribly evil act that's been done on this country in the same manner that it was done to Rhodesia. Turned into Zimbabwe, and the remaining white people that were there got murdered, okay?
What do you think of our Gurdwara?
It's very interesting. Very nice to see it.
Comparable to Amrit?
It looks like shit.
Sir?
It's easier to see.
I can see the smell.
And then, of course, you're expanding it too.
That's right. I mean, it's a lot, as the ladies have said and gentlemen will say, so much work with the community and the youngsters goes on.
Wonderful work.
The Duke of Edinburgh has been involved with interfaith activities for many years.
It doesn't really matter.
There's no such thing as interfaith. You can't have a mixing of faiths. It doesn't work. I mean, obviously, I'm speaking to people that already know what I'm going to say. Like, you must be all watching this and go fucking mental too, because this is just unbelievable. No wonder the country's fucked up.
This community they belong to, because if they're all, in a sense, inspired by the Ark and the conservation, then they're all doing something together without compromising their beliefs in any way, and yet still being able to work together.
The idea that the church...
Do you know what? I think they are just idiots. I think they were just naive idiots. They honestly thought if they could just bring people together and give them support and help, that they'd all just love each other and sing Kumbaya. Oh, not the Muslims, but again, like, what the fuck? It's just so dumb.
Churches and the aid agencies might perhaps talk to each other a bit more, get together a bit more. It's a very good idea.
Yeah, get on.
And the Prince of Wales is well known for his work with many different communities.
On behalf of the London East Academy, I feel privileged to welcome His Royal Highness Prince Charles to our humble school. The Muslim community in East London has always needed an Islamic secondary school to inform the young generation of Muslims the importance of education, and also how important it is to understand the basic contents of Islam.
Why? Why would you need to understand that? Why can't you just fuck off to your own country and have your religion over there? I just can't, guys. All right, I can't do it. No, I can't watch it. It's just too annoying. It's too annoying. It's triggering me. I don't like this. This is just too much. I'm sorry. No, fuck this. No, All right, I thought that was going to be at least a little bit funny. It wasn't. That was horrifying. I didn't enjoy that at all. Yeah, I didn't really know too much about Rhodesia and how it got dismantled and torn apart and the remaining white people got genocided. I didn't know too much about it, but now I know a little bit more, and now I know that the white population that was there were betrayed. They were betrayed at every single turn. And I just felt it viscerally within myself, because I was like, what must that feel like to have your country, your homeland, your motherland, right? How would it feel to have them turn their backs on you and then do everything they can to make sure that all that you've built gets destroyed? Your home, everything, your family, your history gets destroyed. How does that feel? And then I realized I know how that feels because I feel it myself. I think we all do. There is no way of ending this on a positive note, so I will just see you later.